Hello, my name is Alex and this is 52 Miniatures. This is going to be a bit of a newish style of videos, some might even say a simpler style of videos. This series, I hope it's going to be a series, at least a string of reoccurring events, is ironically called Making Money Painting Space Marines. I think only one of those two statements is correct. In this first video of this series, I'll be combining my childhood love for Star Wars with my newly found interest in Games Workshop Horus Heresy Space Marines, also called Beaky Marines. As so happens, this video will also contain the simplest of White Armour recipes. This Stormtrooper or Space Marine, if you must, keeping track of all these galactic empires is kind of tricky, has been primed white using Vallejo White Primer. I promised a very simple white armor, and so here it is. Davies Grey oil paint on a white primed miniature. Oil paints have been around for a very long time. Wargame miniature painters have shun away from them, I guess, because of the ease of use with acrylic water-based paints. I would argue that it's more of a habit thing and that oil paints are in fact not a hassle. I'm mixing some of this oil paint probably at about a 6:1 ratio to create a wash. 6 parts odorless white spirit to 1 part oil paint. I'm not much for measurements, honestly. But white spirit like this can be bought in an art supply store, or if you have a well-stocked game store, there is most probably a hobby brand equivalent. You would have seen that I squeezed the oil paint out on a piece of cardboard before mixing with the white spirit. This is not a requirement, but the cardboard soaks up excess amounts of oil in the oil paint, resulting in a faster drying wash. But I only let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes on the cardboard. If too much oil is soaked out of the paint, then it will have trouble holding together and the wash might become grainy or chunky. Applying the wash over the model is then very simple, it flows out beautifully. The specific reason I used the Vallejo White Primer is because of the satin finish of the primer. This is a big reason. The wash flows out so beautifully even. I do, for example, have a Pro Acryl White Primer that dries to a very matte finish. A matte surface, the reason it appears matte is in fact because it is, in extreme detail, a rough surface. Light does not bounce off it as well and thus it appears matte. Applying the same oil wash on a matte surface and it would stain more because of the rough surface and not flow as well. And the opposite goes for satin or glossy surfaces. Rattle can primers from Games Workshop tend to be satin as well. Oh, and I do make sure to soak up the biggest puddles. And then leave things to set for about 10 to 20 minutes. Dipping a cotton bud in white spirit, making sure to squeeze out the excess white spirit on a piece of tissue, I can then go in and remove the grey oil paint where I think it's not needed. This is like reversed painting. There might even be a word for that, erasure something. I think of this as highlighting, but instead of a brush, I'm using a cotton bud. And depending on how stuck into details one is, we could say that this is an utterly simple technique to get a wonderful white space soldier armor, whether it be a Stormtrooper or a Space Marine or a Space Monkey, for that matter. It doesn't even have to be a space. This works as well for fantasy or historical miniatures. It's not space exclusive. There are of course ways to proceed. Indeed, there are several paths. I waited for my wash to dry. This takes about overnight in a warm and well-ventilated space. And then I varnished the miniature to safely be able to apply acrylic paints on top of the oil paint. This is in fact a bit of a workaround. It is very possible to paint all the different acrylic paints first, all the other details, and finish off with the oil wash. This would save a step. Personally, I prefer to kind of see where I'm going, to have that white armor pretty much done before I add the other layers of paint. And because of the varnish, I now have the possibility of highlighting the white armor with white acrylic paint, if I so wish. While you watch me trying to not get black Templar contrast paint on the white armor, a little tricky, I'd like to quickly mention something about white. A more in-depth video on white is certainly possible, but let's try and just quickly bring some thoughts out into the open. White is in fact the brightest paint we miniature painters have at hand. If we are to paint the brightest blinding light, white is as far as it goes. Also, there is no step beyond white. Highlighting white is not possible. This is something to bear in mind. Having an off-white as the brightest point on your white armor might be a sensible thing. I'm kind of going full on white here. I'm not very sensible. So you be the judge. Painting orange on a black surface is virtually impossible. On a white surface, it's like a dream, without the scary bits. I diluted a darker and consequently brighter muted orange paint with a lot of water. Brushing on relatively thick, making sure to cover the entire shoulder pad in one go, covering everything while the paint is still wet. This will give a smooth, flat, brush stroke-free orange surface. First, a layer of the darker orange, and once that was dry, a layer of the brighter orange. I then highlighted using the brightest orange with some added off-white, and shaded a little using the darker orange with some added black contrast paint and water. Both were already right there in my wet palette. This orange shoulder pad is a real selling point, I think, of Stormtrooper meets Space Marine. The regular Stormtroopers, the ones that, miss every shot, at least if there's an important character they're shooting at, don't have the orange pauldron. But higher ranking Stormtroopers get to sport some orange. I'm not sure they get better at hitting stuff because of it. I then edge highlight some of the black with a light grey using the edge of my brush. Mainly the parts that are to be metal, like the gun and the bits on the backpack, jet thruster thingy. I did go in and add more black to some of these areas before highlighting, again mainly the gun. The contrast paint was just a bit too thin and contrasty, so I pulled things down a bit with a regular diluted black paint. Again, mainly on the weaponry and thruster pack. Very Boba Fett, that. Star Wars has, to my eye at least, had impact on Warhammer, together with the other big sci-fi hits of the time, like Dune and Alien and, well, unfortunately not Planet of the Apes. I mean, where's the monkey faction? Come on. Anyway, this is all natural. We get inspired by things. Same as George Lucas as a filmmaker must have been inspired by Kurosawa's samurai movies and old westerns. But that does not take away the iconic designs of either Stormtrooper or Space Marines. I'm getting sidetracked. I did a little bit of highlighting with the white. Mainly to clean up the armor from previous mistakes of black contrast paint, and also try and add some edge style highlights, again using the side of my brush. And there we are, the Storm Marine Space Trooper. My new little series, how often I'll do this I don't know, but I do want to make simple dioramas. No competition level stuff, just a chance to do something that does not have to go on a round base and into a game. A freedom, if you will, to paint whatever I like. The Beaky Marine being my canvas, and then to build whatever I want, preferably keeping things rather simple, yet enhancing whatever concept I have in my head. So to sediment the idea of mixing up two galactic empires, I wanted a simple Star Wars style backdrop. I found a modular Star Wars style hanger system on my Thingiverse, designed to be printed out much larger and probably on a filament printer, but I did manage to scale things down to fit my little wooden base and the Games Workshop size 28mm miniature. I printed this on my Frozen Sonic Mini 8K resin printer, but things were so thin and rather flimsy, so I also reinforced and improvised some of the building with thin sheets of plasticard. Plastic card is a great material and can be usually found in hobby stores or model railway stores. I got mine from Green Stuff World. I really enjoyed putting this little build together, a great change from painting. I really enjoy small dioramas. It's like the perfect little mix of simple crafting and painting. I made one mistake throughout this build, and that was excessive use of superglue. I just added too much, and it came out too thick out of the bottle. I should have had something I could brush on thinly. A lot of details were smudged because of the glue. This is a simple doorway and a space station corridor, but a door like this and the Star Wars inspired panels do a lot to put it in the Star Wars realm rather than the space Hulk, I mean alien, or whatever, realm. I airbrushed the space station with a dark, cool grey, then adding a bit of bright Caucasian skin tone paint to the same grey. I started to sponge on some textures using this packaging style spongy foam. Personally, I'm not excessively fond of smooth and faultlessness. It might even be because it's easier for me to just slap things on. Making things look weathered rather than perfect is maybe simpler. I don't know. This will be an example, though, of a lot of little steps that in the end create a full picture. A single one of these steps would not look great on its own, but the sum of all parts is a different matter. I'm not going to go into all that many details here. I think seeing them is more than enough. I did experiment a little, finding some Vallejo washes I have not used in a while. If you use the Games Workshop washes, these act quite differently, staining the overall surface a lot more, but also very fun to use for that specific purpose, staining. The trickiest part of this paint job was trying to paint the glow from the wall panel, simulating the fact that there are lights shining and not just smudged, diluted off-white paint. And this is a great example of what I briefly mentioned earlier on the use of white while painting. I need a pretty dull off-white as a base that I can then highlight up to a bright white to at least try and sell the effect of this being shining lights. Yet my not quite Stormtrooper will probably appear brighter than the lights in the wall. And also that my scratches on the space station interior are as bright as the lights shining in the wall. It's all very tricky. What I decided to do in the end as a slight trick of the eye was to tint the lights and the panel round it with a warm filter, a sepia ink with some yellow ink mixed in. Because most of the rest of the space station is very cool, warming up the lights and the surrounding panels does make it feel a little like the area is affected by the light, thus there must be a light, and not just smudgy paint. With the marine in there, everything is looking cool, but still, we could sell this even more, and besides, it looks lonely. Why not give it a friend? A little droid, perhaps. I think that the droid torture scene featuring this style of droid in one of the Star Wars movies is a lot more upsetting than any other thing. Well, maybe the death of Obi-Wan is a strong second, but yeah. So this is in a way a little homage to this wonderful little droid. First out, it was painted pretty much exactly as the space station. Same base coat, same sponged on paint, same washes, same highlights. But then I weathered it more. Rust stains, scratch marks, even more scratch marks, chipping, worn streaks, scratch marks. Did I say scratch marks? Painting this lovely droid kind of happened by itself. I mean, all of this, the marine, the diorama, and that was painted during the one day. Well, apart from the oil paint bit. And so in real life, I've been jumping back and forth between these models, but then presented things in a more orderly fashion. But by all means, don't start going orderly on me. It's a great idea to do things in parallel, using the same paints for different things, picking up a different model while waiting for the other one to dry. When seeing everything put together for the first time, I thought, well, that was nice. But how come everything looks like it's been bashed half to bits, yet the Trooper Marine looks like it's just come out of the clone factory smelling like polish? One of the best things with white armor, well, any whitish surface, is the joy of scratching and weathering it. It's like every thin stroke looks like it was just meant to be there. And so I kind of got carried away, gently bringing this polished marine closer into the grimness and darkness where it belongs. I mean, I seriously got carried away. Scratching with a light grey, adding some brown wash for dirt, then moving on to darker chipping and all sorts. I mean, white is kind of a dumb colour for armour, really. Imagine the time they spent trying to keep it clean. And the only time it works as camouflage is on one of them snow planets. And that's when you get promoted and someone sticks an orange pauldron on your shoulder. This miniature will be finished in a little while, and then the whole diorama will be matte varnished, because I like that, and then we'll be done. I've had a lot of fun breathing life into this idea, and I've already got an idea for the next Beaky Marine. This has been, for me, a simpler video to make. For those times when I just want to have a simple hobby, to sit down and paint without contemplating drone footage. This is not a permanent change, it's an addition. If you're new to this channel and not quite sure of what I'm talking about, well, first of all, welcome, and then please go and check out one of my previous videos. Thank you to George Lucas and Games Workshop for enriching not only my childhood, but my adult life too. I hope you don't mind me messing with your Imperiums. Also, thank you to my great patrons. Please do check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me and my plastic toy soldier and paint addiction. Don't be a Stormtrooper and miss when you go to press the like button. Let me know in the comments if you ever try the White Armour recipe. Don't forget to tell everyone you know about the existence of not only Star Wars and Warhammer, but also about the existence of this very channel. And thank you for watching. Bye. Thank you.